Hello and welcome to Discover History YouTube channel. And tonight we're going to start with our first Christmas related video. And then we'll do another video on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. Unfortunately, we will do our last daily video. Now that's not saying that we're not doing videos again. As we did in the last lockdown, we promised you one video every single day, and really from March to July we gave you one video a day. And then obviously when we were at a lockdown, because we were busy, we were working more face-to-face as such, socially distanced face-to-face work, then obviously we did sporadic videos every now and again basically. So we've been in lockdown for a month basically, so we've provided you with one video a day. And obviously on Wednesday when we come out of lockdown again, we'll be going back to doing guided tours and so on. So we're going back to socially distanced face-to-face work again. So very simply, we'll go back to doing ad hoc videos. So you will still get a video, but it won't be daily like we do during a lockdown. Now, because today is the first Sunday of Advent, we thought today would be the best day to give a video about the origins of Christmas. And then what we'll do tomorrow and the next day is we're going to take you through the history of Christmas. So when it comes to our last video on Wednesday, you would have seen a good few thousand years really of Christmases. Now, when we look at the word Christmas, it's actually a Christian word. It comes from a medieval term, a Middle Ages term, which is Christ Mass, the Mass of Christ. So really that's a Christian thing. Well, we don't want to talk about the Christian ideas behind Christmas, not yet. That will be in tomorrow's video. So what we thought is tonight's video will look at what happened before Christmas becomes a Christian celebration as such. And the interesting thing is, think back to our ancestors. If you think of yourself, let's say living in Worcester about 700 BC, so we're pagan, we're these new farming people, we're farming the land with oxen, ploughs up and down the river meadow, for example, we're fishing in the Severn for salmon, for example. Well, in that period, it would have been quite dull and depressing at this time of the year. Even in, for example, the Anglo-Saxon period, the early medieval, it would have been pretty depressing at this time of the year. That's mainly down to the fact that we've had a very busy farming year. So we would have been farming, back-breaking heavy work basically. And at this time of the year, because the days are shorter, it's a lot darker, it's dull, it's foggy, it's wet, it's miserable, it's very, very cold, frosty. There's actually not much happening in the farming world. You may be, for example, outside digging a new drainage channel, a drainage ditch, for example, or mainly repairing your tools like ploughs and things like that. But apart from that, there's not much happening outside. A lot of the things are dead. A lot of the fields are just left fallow. There are ploughed fields with manure spread on them, for example, ready for the new year. But apart from that, it's damp, dark and depressing. There's not much happening. And you would have now, at this time of the year, been living off your stocks from the harvest. And that also included getting ready to kill your pig. And famously, even in a medieval household later on in history, most peasants, most poor people even had a pig, fattened up all year, killed it in the winter time. So it's a dark, depressing time of the year. So people looked forward and invented a winter celebration, is the best way of calling it, really. Now, I'm trying not to call it Christmas because Christmas is really a Christian thing, as I said, and it only exists when you get to technically the Middle Ages, shall we say, really. So in this early period, we're pagan. So we believe in many gods. There's gods of the water, gods of the trees. There's probably even a god of the toilet, to be fair. So we were not believing in one centralized god, and it was dark and depressing, so we need some form of winter celebration. Remember, it's not Christian, it's not Christmas yet. So what did our ancestors have? Well, probably the earliest winter festival that we know of, the earliest probable, remember, because we don't fully know about this period in history, is probably winter solstice, which is around about the 21st of December. And when we have winter solstice, we can only guess to a certain degree what our ancestors used to do. Now, over the years, Stonehenge, for example, has been studied quite a bit. It's been studied by astronomers, it's been studied by archaeologists, historians, you name it, they've studied it. Even geologists have looked at the stone. And some of the pits have been found to contain animal bone, for example, from great feasts. So we could probably guess, and like I said, this is mainly guesswork, that people would have gone to central ceremonial sites. For example, if you do live in that area, maybe you would be drawn to places like Stonehenge or many of the other henges and wood henges in the country. Maybe in Worcester, you would go to a clearing in a forest, for example. And remember, in the oak forest, clearings were always seen as a ceremonial meeting place, for example, and the druids would go there. But what we must remember is most of our knowledge about this period, along with druids, for example, comes from Roman writing. So we have to take it with a pinch of salt. So imagine it. You've been drawn to somewhere like Stonehenge. It's coming up to winter solstice, and we would gather here, we would pray, we would probably make some sort of sacrifice, either animal or even human, because remember, the Romans didn't like that about the Britons, for example, and we would feast. And that's what I find absolutely fascinating, because when we look at Christmas later, it is coinciding with that period of winter solstice. It coincides with the shortest day. And just like Christmas is, where we stuff ourselves silly with turkey, our ancestors were also stuffing themselves. Now, interesting fact, when they tested some of the bones at Stonehenge, some of the cattle bone, for example, had actually come from the Highlands and Islands of Scotland. So maybe Stonehenge was even more important than we think of it. Maybe people came from Worcester, maybe people came from the Highlands and Islands of Scotland just to come here for winter solstice. So people would have had some sort of feast, some sort of ceremony, and that is winter solstice, probably our earliest version of a Christmas. And like I said, Christmas is purely a Christian thing. But then eventually, because this country sees a lot of newcomers, we obtain a lot of their traditions. For example, by the time we get the Roman invasion, and remember there was attempts at invading under Julius Caesar in the around about 50-55 BC. Then there was the true invasion in 43 AD. The Romans introduced their version of a winter festival, and they called it the Festival of Saturnalia. And very simply, it was a time for eating and drinking, and once again it mirrors what we do at Christmas time. But the interesting thing about the Roman version is the Romans would come together round about the 20th, 21st, 22nd of December, and they would also have something that we would now call is role reversal. So you may, for example, have the owners of the villa, owners of the household, using their slaves as the owners. So you reverse roles. You may wear the gowns or the tunica of the slaves, and the slaves in your household, your servants in the household, will dress as the owners of the house. So it's a complete role reversal. And if there is anyone watching this that had served in the military, be it the Army, the Royal Air Force or the Royal Navy, famously at Christmas time there is a role reversal. It's the only time really where the officers, for example, will go around the barracks and issue something known as gunfire, which is basically tea with whiskey in it, for example. And then when it came to Christmas lunch in the services, it's often the officers that serve the men on Christmas Day. So it's role reversal. So even though these are pagan things, the feasting, for example, the role reversal, it's surprising how many of these things we still do under the heading of Christianity, celebrating the birth of Christ. But Eventually, when the Romans leave, we then open to a lot of new invasions. By the 5th and 6th centuries, we see, for example, the Angles, the Jutes, the Anglo-Saxons, we even see the Danes and the Vikings, and they introduce us to their version of a winter festival. And for example, they introduce us to the festival of Yule, for example, which is the festival of light. It's the festival of new life, the looking forward to spring, which in a way is what Saturnalia and the winter solstice is all about. And I've got here a picture of a feasting hall, and that was often decorated often with greenery, which the Romans were also doing, and they were using things like the holly, the ivy and the mistletoe, and we always associate those with Christmas today, but they associated them with plants, for example, plants and trees that defy winter. In other words, these are plants that will carry on growing when everything else is dead outside. And this would have been magical to our ancestors. Think back to what I said at the start. People living in Worcester, in their little round houses where the cathedral is, all their hard work at farming's over. They look outside and it's dull and dark and bleak and everything's dead. But then they see things like holly, ivy and mistletoe. It's magical plants. They're defying death. They're defying winter. So the other interesting thing about the festival of Yule is it's all down to really the story about, for example, the tree of life. And what they used to say is the fires in the feasting halls were never out, basically. So what would happen at this sort of time of the year is someone would cut down the Yule log, so a big tree, and it would be dragged onto the fire, and during the festival of Yule it would burn, and it would burn, and it will burn, and it will burn, and eventually all the other fires later in the year will be lit from the same embers. So technically the new Yule log will be lit by the embers of the previous one, because these fires never went out, because even in the summer these fires were used for light, they were used for heat, they were used for cooking. So it's the tree of life, it carries on living. So you'd bring in the Yule log and it would burn there during the great feast. And like I said, throughout this winter solstice, Saturnalia, the festival of Yule, it always seems to be a great feast, a big party atmosphere, and also things like decorations. And what I'm going to do with these videos up to the 2nd of December is you will see how Christmas has evolved. This is the first one, so this is pre-Christian times. This is our pagan winter festivals. You will see in the next video how we get Christianity jump on the pagan ideas and make it their own. And I often say when you get to the Middle Ages, Christmas is probably at its best. And then you will see in the videos on, for example, Tuesday and Wednesday, how Christmas have changed over the years. But every single time you will see in, for example, at Christmas of 2020, we have cherry picked, we have picked and chosen the bits of Christmas that we like. We like eating, thumbs up for that one. We like the drinking, thumbs up for that one. We like decorating and technically having a party, even though it is going to be a socially distanced party, but simple. Throughout all the years of Christmas or a winter festival, we've always enjoyed it when it's been the bleakest and darkest time of the year, basically. And that's what Christmas is. It's a winter festival, but Christmas is definitely a Christian thing that happens at this time. So hopefully that's given you a slight introduction to our Christmas that we have. And in the subsequent videos, like I said, you will see how it changes and evolves. So as I said at the start, this is not going to be the last videos that we ever do. It just means that when lockdown finishes, we won't be giving you a daily video, but we will do them in the future. Our YouTube channel is definitely here to stay. Remember, subscribe, share away, and make sure you comment. Let us know, for example, what you would like to see. This is as much your channel as it is ours. On that note, as always, stay safe and have a good week. Bye-bye.